You ever live somewhere that feels too quiet? Not peaceful, not serene, just quiet, in a way that makes you realize how far you are from everything else. That's what Monticello, Arkansas was to me. A small town tucked between pine thickets and two-lane highways that disappear into the woods. Most folks around there never lock their doors. They don't need to. They grew up knowing every neighbor, every dirt road, every tree that's been standing since before the town had a name. I thought I knew it too, until the woods started watching me back. It began on a night that didn't seem special. No storm, no full moon, just the same still air that always hung around my cabin at dusk. I'd finished stacking wood for the week and sat outside with my dog Mason, listening to the frogs echoing from the creek bed. You could hear a pin drop out there, but that night, the sounds stopped. All of it. Frogs, crickets, wind, everything went dead silent, like someone hit mute on the whole forest. Mason perked his ears, started to growl, low and steady. His eyes fixed on the tree line behind the shed, the kind of stare animals get when they see something they don't recognize. I remember feeling that quiet in my bones, that thick, heavy stillness before something happens. Then it came. A crunch of leaves, slow, deliberate. One step, then another. I called out, thought it might have been a neighbor cutting through the woods. No answer. Mason barked once, sharp and terrified, then bolted straight under the porch. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, standing just past the tree line. But the shape was wrong. Shoulders too high, limbs too long. The outline didn't fit anything I knew. My flashlight hit it for less than a second, but that was enough. The reflection in its eyes wasn't like any animal I'd seen. No glow, no red tint, just black, like two holes punched into the night. And it didn't move, didn't flinch, just tilted its head. That was the night I realized something out there was watching me, something that wasn't supposed to exist this close to town. I didn't tell anyone at first, because in Monticello, when you say you've seen something in the woods that doesn't belong, people stop talking to you. They look at you the way they look at drunks on Main Street, with pity, not belief. But whatever that thing was, it didn't care if I believed in it. It came back, and by the time I decided to leave Monticello, it had already made sure I'd never sleep right again. To understand what happened out there, you have to understand the kind of place Monticello really is. Monticello sits deep in the southeastern part of Arkansas, about an hour and a half south of Little Rock if you're driving fast and don't mind the curves. It's the kind of place where the map looks green no matter how far you zoom in. Pockets of farmland stitched between heavy pine, creeks that vanish under the highway, and a humidity that never really lets up. People there keep to themselves. The town's big enough to have a Walmart, but small enough that you still see hand-painted signs on gas stations. Most of the folks I knew worked lumber, paper mill, or in the college over on University Drive. Days ended early. Nights were for porch lights and bug zappers. I'd moved there in 2019, rented a small cabin a few miles out on the edge of Drew County, not far from the Saline River bottoms. The kind of place you rent when you want quiet. I'd been through a messy breakup, and I told myself the woods were the best place to clear my head. Cheap rent, fresh air, no one to bother me. The cabin sat on a dirt road barely wide enough for one truck. It was old, half hand-built, half rotting, but solid. Out front, you could see the field where deer grazed at dusk. Out back, just endless timber. No fences. No neighbors close enough to hear if you yelled. The first week, it was exactly what I wanted. I'd wake up to woodpeckers tapping at the siding and fall asleep to the drone of cicadas. I started to learn the sounds of the place, how the forest has its own rhythm, The soft roll of wind before rain, the rustle of armadillos in the brush, the faint howl of coyotes around 3 a.m. But every so often, that rhythm slipped. I'd hear something in the distance, not close, but big, moving through the trees like it had a direction. You can tell the difference between something wandering and something tracking. This wasn't a deer grazing. It wasn't a hog rooting around. Whatever it was, it moved with intent. I asked around in town once. A man at the feed store said it was probably feral hogs. They tear through land all the time out there. Another said panthers, though no one's officially seen one in decades. A woman behind me in line laughed and said, "You'll get used to the noises. The woods talk out here." Everyone said it so casually, like the forest wasn't something to be afraid of, like it was just another neighbor. But you can tell when people are repeating something they've been told their whole lives without really believing it anymore. There's a tone to it, polite, cautious, like they're testing if you've heard the stories too. Later, I found out Monticello's got its share of them. Old tales from the Drew County line about things that walk upright and watch hunters from the trees. Wood apes, boogers, stickmen. Every county has its own name for them. I never paid much attention. You grow up hearing those stories in every southern town. Still, something about those woods felt older. There were spots where the trees grew in strange patterns, circles that didn't make sense, areas where no underbrush ever came back. I didn't know what caused it, maybe old burns or logging scars, but the longer I lived there, the more those places made me uneasy. Even Mason, my dog, would skirt around them on walks. I didn't realize it then, but those empty patches would end up meaning something. Because whatever was out there watching us, it always came from those same places. The first real sign that something wasn't right happened a few weeks later, and it started with the sound of silence. It started small, the kind of things you brush off if you've spent enough time in the country. One night I was sitting on the porch, coffee in hand, listening to the wind move through the treetops. The air was thick and still, the way it gets before rain, when Mason lifted his head and started that low growl again. Not barking, just staring at the tree line, lips curled back, vibrating like he was warning something I couldn't see. I didn't think much of it. Maybe a raccoon, maybe a stray dog. But when I shined my flashlight out there, I saw nothing. Just branches moving slightly, even though there was no breeze. The kind of movement that feels deliberate. The next morning, I found tracks along the back fence line. Big ones. Not boots, not deer hooves. Bare. Human-looking, but too wide, too long. The stride between them didn't make sense either. I measured it later, nearly 5 feet apart. Whatever made them wasn't small, and it wasn't walking on all fours. I called my neighbor, Old Man Donnelly. His house was about a mile down the road. He'd lived there his whole life, hunted everything there was to hunt in Arkansas. I asked him what kind of animal leaves prints like that. He didn't even come look, just said, "You sure you want to know?" and hung up. The next few nights, things escalated. Tools went missing from the shed. My trash cans were dragged halfway across the yard. Not knocked over, dragged. Mason refused to sleep inside, but also wouldn't go more than 10 feet from the porch light. He'd just sit there, staring into the dark, trembling. Then came the smell. If you've ever been near roadkill in the middle of summer, that heavy, metallic rot, it was like that, but thicker, almost oily. It clung to the air. You could taste it. Every time that smell showed up, the forest went silent again. No crickets, no owls, just that suffocating quiet and the feeling that something was close. I started keeping the porch light on all night.
One evening around midnight, I heard what I thought was knocking. 3 dull thuds, spaced apart, not on the door, but coming from the trees, like someone hitting a bat against a trunk. Whack, whack, whack. I stepped outside, called out, "Who's there?" The sound stopped instantly. Then something answered. Not a voice exactly, but a low, throaty hum. It came from deep in the timber, too deep for a person to stand there and still be that loud. I waited, holding the flashlight, every nerve tight, and then I saw eyes. Not glowing, reflecting. 2 points of dull light about 8 feet off the ground, shifting side to side, slow and steady, as if whatever it was swaying. I backed up and shut the door. Mason was under the table, whining. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the cabin sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind felt like something brushing the walls. When the sun came up, I told myself I imagined it, that maybe it was a trick of light. But that afternoon, I noticed something strange along the tree line. All the branches about shoulder height, the same height where I saw those eyes, were broken clean, snapped off like something large had pushed through. The bark was scraped, and the ground was sunken, as if something heavy had been standing there for a long time. I started realizing this wasn't random. Whatever it was watching the cabin, keeping its distance, testing me, like it wanted to see how long it could stand there before I'd notice. I wish I could say that was the last time I saw those eyes, but what happened next proved it wasn't curious anymore. It was hunting.
It happened on a Friday night, late September. The air had that sharp edge that comes right before the first cold snap of the season. The woods felt heavier than usual. I remember because even the sound of my boots on the porch boards seemed louder than it should have been. I'd been trying to convince myself that whatever was out there was just wildlife. Maybe a black bear, maybe a trespasser. I even bought a motion light for the back of the cabin, set it up facing the woods. It was supposed to make me feel safer. It didn't. Around midnight, I was sitting inside reading when the power flickered. Not out, just a quick surge, like something had pulled on the line. The cabin went dark for a second, then came back on. That's when Mason started barking. Not his usual bark, but that panicked, high-pitched one that sounds almost human. I grabbed my flashlight and opened the back door. The night was pitch black. No moon, no wind, no crickets. I could feel the air pressing in, humid and still. The motion light wasn't on. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was the smell. That same thick, metallic rot from before, only worse. I stepped off the porch, shining the light along the tree line. The beam caught something. 2 shapes low to the ground, shifting just beyond the reach of the light. I thought it might have been a pair of raccoons or coyotes, until one of them stood upright. My first thought wasn't fear. It was confusion, because it didn't make sense. It stood there, tall, easily 7, maybe 8 feet. Long arms, shoulders too broad, head slightly forward like it wasn't used to standing upright. The skin, or fur, I couldn't tell which, looked patchy, uneven, as if it had been burned and grown back wrong. The smell was strongest when the wind shifted towards me. Mason went dead silent. I realized he was crouched behind my legs, trembling so hard I could feel it through my jeans. I whispered, "Hey." Have to scare it off, have to see if it reacted like an animal. It didn't move. Then, crack. A branch snapped right beside me, close enough that I spun the flashlight around, but nothing was there. When I turned back, the figure had moved. It was closer. Not walking, not running, just there. like the space between us had shortened without sound. That's when I noticed its breathing. Deep, ragged, almost wet. You could hear it, not through your ears, but in your chest, like it vibrated through the air itself. I backed up towards the porch, trying not to make sudden noise. The boards creaked beneath me. It tilted its head again, just like the first night. Slow, deliberate. And that's when the motion light flicked on. For a split second, I saw it clear. The whole shape. Not fur, not clothes. The surface of its skin looked stretched, uneven, like layers of hide stitched together. The face. God, the face looked wrong. Too flat. Eyes wide apart. The mouth wasn't even in the right place. Lower. Too long. Like someone had tried to copy a human and got the anatomy mixed up. Then it turned away. Fluid. Fast. Gone into the dark before I could even raise the light again. The motion lamp blinked, buzzed, and died. The smell lingered a moment longer, then faded. The woods went silent again. I stood there for a long time, flashlight trembling in my hand, trying to convince myself that I hadn't just seen what I saw. But then I noticed something in the dirt near the porch steps. A print. Same as before. Long, wide, human-like. Only this time, there were two parallel grooves beside it, like something had dug its hands, or claws, into the soil to steady itself. That was enough. I backed inside, locked every door, pushed furniture against the back one just in case. Mason didn't bark. He didn't move. He just stared at the wall until morning. When daylight came, I went out to check again. The tracks were still there, and leading away from the house. But halfway into the tree line, they stopped. Not faded, stopped. Like whatever it was had vanished into thin air. I thought about calling the sheriff again, but what would I say? Something human-shaped that smells like a corpse is circling my cabin? They'd laugh. Maybe send someone to check for trespassers and that'd be it. But that night changed something. Before, it was just a feeling. Paranoia. Maybe imagination. Now, I knew. There was something living in those woods that wasn't supposed to be there. And it knew where I slept. After that night, things stopped being random. It started showing up closer, bolder, like it wanted me to know it was watching.
You ever lived somewhere that felt normal? Quiet streets, friendly neighbors, the kind of town where folks wave when you drive by, and then one night something happens that makes you realize you never really knew what was out there. That was Monticello for me. A small Arkansas town wrapped in pine trees and fog. It looked peaceful from the outside. Gas stations that closed early, the smell of burning wood in the air, and old trucks parked outside diners that hadn't changed their menus in decades. I moved there thinking I'd found a place to finally slow down. I rented this small place about 10 minutes outside town, off Highway 425. Surrounded by woods so thick, even during the day, it looked like dusk under the canopy. Locals had a saying, "Don't go past the tree line after dark." They'd laugh when they said it, like it was just a local joke. But when you've lived there long enough, you start noticing the way they don't laugh when they're alone. You start noticing things they don't talk about. A missing dog here, a strange noise there. And when I'd ask about the woods, about the screams people said they'd heard echoing across the hills, they'd just shake their heads. Old stories, they'd say. Best not to go looking for what's not meant to be found. At first, I brushed it off like everyone else would. But that changed one night when something walked out from those trees. Something that made me realize those stories weren't stories at all.
It started with sounds. Not screams, not growls, just sounds I couldn't place. The first night I noticed it, I was sitting on the porch, beer in hand, late summer heat still hanging thick in the air. The forest out back was so dense it looked like a wall of shadow even with the porch light on. I remember crickets, cicadas, the hum of night. Then suddenly, everything just stopped. Dead quiet. If you've ever lived out in the country, you know that kind of silence isn't natural. It's not peaceful. It's warning. I leaned forward, thinking maybe I'd scared something off. Then I heard it. A crack. A branch snapping somewhere in the tree line. Then another. Closer. Too heavy for a deer. Too deliberate for a raccoon. I stood up, trying to look past the glow of the porch light into the black. Couldn't see a thing. Just darkness that seemed to breathe back at me. Then came this sound. Low, drawn out, like something exhaling through its teeth. Not a growl, not a hiss. Something between the two. I remember saying out loud, probably just a coyote. Like if I said it, it'd make sense. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't. Because whatever it was standing still. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. The way you feel eyes on you before you find them. That crawling pressure that sits on your neck. After a minute that felt like an hour, the night came back to life. Crickets started again. Air moving through the trees, just like nothing happened. But I couldn't shake it. That night, I locked my doors, shut every curtain, and for the first time since moving to Monticello, I slept with the lights on. The next morning, I went out to check. Right past the porch steps, in the soft dirt, were prints. Large, human-like, but wrong. The heel was deep, the toes spread wide, and whatever it was, it walked on 2 feet. For a while, I tried to pretend it didn't happen. I told myself those footprints were old, distorted by rain, maybe even human. But every night after that, I'd catch myself glancing toward the woods without meaning to. It wasn't paranoia. It was instinct. Because something was out there, and it was learning me. The second time, it came closer. I was inside, late again. Storm rolling in, the kind that shakes the window panes before the rain even starts. I had the TV on low, just background noise, when I noticed movement outside. A flicker across the glass, like someone passed by the window. I turned the volume down, waited. Lightning flashed, and in that split second of white, I saw it. A shape, standing right at the edge of the trees. It wasn't crouched, it wasn't hiding. It was standing, upright, still as stone. I remember the outline. Shoulders too broad, neck too short, head slightly tilted like it was listening. Then thunder rolled, and the light was gone. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out onto the porch, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The beam barely cut through the rain, just streaks of water catching light. But I heard it, the same slow exhale,
closer this time. That sound again, but deeper, like it was responding. I backed inside, locked the door, and sat there the rest of the night with the light trained on that tree line. Every so often, lightning would flash, and each time I swore it was closer. Morning came, and the ground was torn up like something had circled the house. Mud, claw marks, deep impressions, but no clear prints. Like it wanted me to know it had been there, without showing me what it was. After that, the noises came every night. Scratches on the siding, footsteps in the gravel. One time, I heard something drag along the porch railing, slow and deliberate. I even thought I heard a voice once, a whisper so faint I couldn't tell if it came from outside or from the back of my own head. Whatever it wasn't hunting. Not yet. It was studying. There's a moment when fear stops being a feeling and starts being a fact. That night, that's when it crossed the line. It was just past 2 a.m. I'd fallen asleep on the couch with the lamp still on. I woke up to the sound of something tapping, slow, rhythmic, like knuckles on glass. I thought it was the wind at first, until I realized it was coming from the kitchen window. I sat up, didn't move, didn't breathe, just listened. 3 taps, pause, then 2 more, deliberate, human-like. I stood, careful not to make the floorboards creak, and leaned just far enough around the hallway to see the window. The curtain was half drawn, but there was a shape behind it, tall, unmoving. I couldn't see its face, but I could see the outline of a hand pressed flat against the glass. 5 fingers, spread wide. The skin looked wrong. Pale, stretched too tight, like wet paper over bone. I froze. Then it dragged its hand downward, slow enough that I could hear the squeal of its nails on the glass. That sound, I can still hear it. When I finally snapped out of it, I grabbed my rifle from the corner and flicked on the porch light. Nothing. Just rain dripping off the eaves, yard empty. I ran to the window. No footprints, no handprint. Nothing but condensation. I told myself maybe I dreamt it, but when I turned back toward the living room, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The front door, wide open. I know I locked it. I know I did. The doorknob was slick with rainwater, and on the floor just inside the doorway were droplets, not from boots, not from shoes. Bare, human. I shut the door, bolted it, and sat with my back against it till the sun came up. That was the night I realized it wasn't just watching anymore. It was testing. It wanted to see what I'd do when it came inside. By the time night fell again, I'd already packed a bag. Didn't matter. Something in me knew it wasn't going to let me leave that easily. Around midnight, the power went out. Whole house went black. Not a flicker, not a surge, just dead silence. Even the crickets stopped. Then came the smell, like copper and wet earth, heavy, suffocating. I could feel it in my throat before I even heard the first sound. That same low exhale, this time inside the house. I grabbed the flashlight and rifle, hands shaking so bad the beam bounced across the walls. The smell got stronger as I moved toward the hallway. That's when I saw it, the back door, hanging open again. I called out, voice cracking, Who's there? No answer. Just the sound of breathing. Slow, deep, too steady to be human. Then movement. Something crawled across the floor in the shadows, too fast to follow. The beam caught a flash of skin, pale, stretched, slick with rain. Arms too long. It moved on all fours, but twisted wrong, like its joints didn't match its body. I fired. The blast lit up the room for half a second, and I saw it clearly. Its face wasn't a face. It looked made, like stretched leather shaped into something that was trying to mimic a person. Eyes too wide, mouth too small, stretched like it didn't belong there. The shot made it reel back, but it didn't fall. It let out this sound, a screech that shook the whole frame of the house, high-pitched and guttural at the same time. I bolted for the truck, flashlight bouncing, mud flying. I didn't even look back, just dove inside and locked the doors. But before I could start the engine, something slammed against the side of the truck. Once, twice. The metal dented inward like it had been hit with a sledgehammer. I turned the key. Nothing. Dead. Every light on the dash flickered once and went black. Then I saw it in the reflection of the windshield, standing in the glow of the porch light, head tilted just like before, watching. Rain dripping off its arms. No expression. Just stillness. I don't remember making the decision. I just remember flooring it. Engine finally catching, tires spinning through mud, headlights cutting across that figure for an instant before it vanished into the trees. I didn't stop driving until the sun came up and I hit the highway. And when I looked in the rearview mirror one last time, the tree line was empty. But the smell, that copper smell, it lingered inside the truck all the way into town. By the time I reached town, the sky was turning gray, that washed-out color right before sunrise. I pulled into the first gas station I saw, stumbled inside and just stood there for a second, dripping mud and rainwater onto the floor. The clerk froze. I remember her face, middle-aged, kind eyes. She asked if I'd been in an accident. I told her something came after me out by 425. She didn't ask what. She didn't even look surprised. She just reached under the counter, handed me a towel and said quietly, "You're not the first." I must have looked confused because she added, "You should talk to Sheriff Gentry. He knows." The way she said it, not like a suggestion, like a warning. An hour later, I was sitting in the sheriff's office, still shaking, trying to explain what I saw. He didn't write anything down, didn't ask for details. He just leaned back in his chair and said, "You didn't see what you think you saw." I told him about the footprints, the smell, the scratches on the siding. He just kept shaking his head. "Those woods have their stories," he said, "but that's all they are, stories." Then he leaned forward and added, "If you value your peace, you'll leave it alone." That's when I realized. They knew. Not just him. The whole town. They'd been living with it long before I got there. I went back to the cabin later that day with a deputy. The house looked untouched. No footprints. No damage to the truck. Not even the door I swore had been torn open. It was like it never happened. But I found something the deputy didn't see. A single strip of skin caught under the porch rail. Dried, thin, almost translucent. It crumbled when I touched it. I didn't stay another night. Packed what I could and left Monticello before sunset. No goodbyes, no explanations. Weeks later, I tried to look up reports. Missing persons, animal attacks, anything.
But every archive I searched had gaps, pages missing, files locked behind private access. It's like the town itself decided to erase what happens out there. And maybe that's why nobody ever talks about Monticello. Not because they don't believe, but because they remember.
It's been over 3 years since I left Monticello. I haven't gone back, not even to visit. But I still think about those woods, the way they swallowed sound, the way they seemed alive even when the wind wasn't moving. People always ask me what I think it was, and the truth is, I don't know. I've heard every theory: a skinwalker, a feral human, some undiscovered predator. But those are just words we use to make the unknown sound smaller, to box it into something we can pretend to understand. What I saw didn't feel like an animal. It didn't feel like a person. It felt like something that wasn't supposed to be seen. Sometimes when I'm driving late at night, headlights cutting through empty highway, I catch myself glancing toward the tree line, half expecting to see that same figure watching from the dark. And every time I think about what the sheriff said, you didn't see what you think you saw. Maybe he was trying to protect me, or maybe he was warning me that knowing too much about Monticello is how people end up disappearing into those woods and never coming out. I don't tell this story to scare anyone. I tell it because I want someone to remember. Because whatever lives out there in those Arkansas woods, it remembers us.